Awesome. Let's see. We have about 70 register, so
We
here we
shall
go.
see. We shall
There's
see.
Miss Lindsay. And John, great to see you guys. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be another amazing session with Miss Camela Thompson, who I just adore. Very excited to have you here. Everyone that's coming in, would love for y'all to drop in the chat, say hi, where you're coming in from. It is supposed to be like 80 today, and it's incredibly overcast right now, so I don't know how well that's going to be over here. But what's it like up in your part of the world, Miss Camela?
Well, I think we're going to reach a very balmy 50 degrees, but it is sunny. So it's the first time we've seen sunlight in months. So I'm very happy.
Oh my gosh. Has it
Seattle.
been snowing up there? Or like what?
Yeah, it's been really a weird year for us. Typically, we don't get any snow. It has snowed several times and fairly recently. So it's very odd. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw like another nor'eastern or whatever is happening again in the East Coast. And
Yep.
I'm from Arizona, and you wouldn't have, a lot of people don't know that we get snow up north, but we're getting crazy snow up there right now. And it's like
Yep.
snow or skiing season is still happening, which is outstanding. So,
Yeah. And I'm headed to Arizona in a couple of weeks. So we will
oh
have
my
to connect.
gosh,
Yeah.
that sounds lovely. I love that. What are you going to do out there?
Soak in as much sunlight as possible. I'm just gonna.
Oh my gosh, that sounds, well, hopefully it'll be beautiful because it's been like rainy, snowy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that sounds like a blast. Well, I know today is going to be a great session. I just got some messages. Some folks are wrapping up calls and are coming in. And so we'll just get started. As always, this is recorded, so you will always be able to find it on the interwebs on YouTube and in the events channel. But for now, Miss Camela, I'll let you go. And if anyone's got questions, drop them in the chat or feel free to send them in the Q&A box below or in Slack. Sometimes I get messages that way as well. And so, Camela, I'll just interrupt you and ask some questions as we go. But for now, I think you've got sharing privileges, and I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. So my Rage Bunny, which you'll see in a couple minutes when I do the intro slides, is very active today. The squirrel highway is in full effect. Now she's outside, so hopefully it's a little bit more muted. Okay, so why should you listen to me is where we're going to start, and then what you're going to learn and what's in it for you is coming right after that. So I am Camela Thompson. Gotta love startups. I am now the go-to-market maven at Caliber Mind. What that means is I sit between operations, customer success, sales, and marketing. So I'm no longer exclusively focused on marketing. Well, I never was, but now we're making it official. So the last 15 years, I was in B2B tech, and I supported many executives in their battles in the boardroom. And I'm going to show you how to frame your data so that executives will listen. These are my assistants. The Rage Bunny is on the left. My silent partner's on the right, instituting a travel ban. He hates it when I go on a plane. So what you'll learn, so you should walk away with this knowing the 4 pillars of negotiation, why it's important to become a storyteller, and how to think about building a board deck. So we're going to better prepare you for tough questions and how to navigate those, deliver the information in a way people can process it, and build credibility through a lot of honesty in our presentations. I'm just checking the chat really quickly. Perfect. Okay. So I like to start this with, if you walk away with one thing that's stuck in your mind, it's the 6 commandments of presenting data. And these may grow over time as I see new things, but these are hard learned lessons. Fortunately, other people learn them and not me on most of these, but watch and learn. So the first commandment is don't hide bad results ever. In marketing land, we are taught to frame things positively, particularly when it comes to our product. We do not want to do that when it comes to numbers. So just the facts are what we're going for. We're going to state them as we see them. And it's really important to, number two, start by acknowledging the core company goal attainment. So marketers unintentionally look really tone deaf if they don't start their presentation with, we were behind on bookings, we're behind on pipeline. If any of those are true, we want to start by acknowledging that to show that we are aware of how our efforts are impacting the rest of the business. Well, I say our efforts, we can only control so much, but it's really important for us to understand that our core goal is to feed pipeline and bookings. And if they aren't hitting their number, honestly, the board sees us as not hitting our number either. We want to consistently report on the same metrics. So we covered this a bit last time, but one of the biggest mistakes I see marketers do is report on how initiatives performed, individual initiatives like a big trade show, something like that. Mistake numero uno. So what you want to do is focus on your top line metrics like bookings and pipeline, and then you're going to speak to how your initiatives have impacted those things. So instead of focusing on the initiative, we focus on bookings and pipeline, and then we tell a story about how those initiatives impacted those numbers. So your initiatives are going to go in your appendix, and you're going to focus on the top line numbers. You're going to tie all of your reports and your data back to the core company goal through storytelling. So when I talk about leads, we're talking about this is going to impact pipeline next quarter and bookings the quarter after that. And we're going to keep all of that in context and keep wrapping it back to the thing that they care about the most, which is whether or not we're going to hit our goal. So come prepared. We talked about reading charts. We'll share that recording and presentation, but the main point there is you want to spot any anomalies, trends, and be prepared to speak to them because they are going to ask the questions. So the better you can get at reading charts, that last session we did, the better you will be prepared for the questions the board will ask you, because they're looking for the same things. They're just trying to figure out, was there a spike? Was there a dip? Why? And how are you responding to it? And then remember, less is always more. So this goes back to my don't report on all the initiatives, don't report on all the channels unless they ask you to. And even then I would kind of push back. We want to focus on the top line numbers, and then we want to speak to how those things are feeding those top line numbers. And this can be different if you're in a private equity corp, because they'll come to you with a long list of metrics you have to report on. So preparation prevents most ills. So like I mentioned in the reading charts, the more you can spot early on and the more you can work with an analyst or an operations person and prepare for the questions that are going to come, the best prepared you'll be to speak to the board. And that means you're going to do a little bit of homework before your presentation. You're going to spend some time with that deck. You're going to spend some time with operations. You're going to push them to give you insights. So let them know, hey, I'm not really spotting anything that jumps out at me. What do you see? You want to hear their theories, develop your own, and then research them. Because if you can get in front of a problem before you speak to the board and have a plan on how you're going to attack it, you look so much better than being surprised by a question. You need to anticipate the questions before they come at you. So every time I build a board deck, I have in my mind, and this is part of data storytelling, what's the goal? What do my board members care about and what do they not care about? They don't want to know about the tactics and the day-to-day. They want to know what happened. So how are you performing to goal? What you're doing to either make it better or make it even better. So if you perform poorly, what are you doing to fix it? If you perform well, what are you doing to accelerate it? Because it's always more. And then they want to trust the information you're giving them, but they're going to need your help to do that. And we'll go into that in this presentation. So for venture-backed startups specifically, so earlier stage companies, you're going to have more metrics as your company matures. And for private equity companies, it's going to look really different. And we can do another presentation if this is helpful. But the thing that venture-backed startups care about early on are we hitting our number? Will we hit our number next quarter and maybe the quarter after that? And are we managing our costs appropriately? That's all they care about. They don't care about initiatives. They don't care about channels. They don't care about tactics. They don't care about who does what. They really want to know these three things. And that's how we have to frame every presentation. So the last time I was reporting to the board, I had a board member come up to me afterwards and say, I really wish that more marketers understood that you need to report on the same things every time. And I don't care about what we call vanity metrics. I really want to focus on bookings, pipeline, and then as early indicators, we can use leads and engagement. But really, the ultimate thing they care about is what we closed. So the more we can tie what we're doing in marketing to that. So if we're talking about initiatives, we're pointing to bookings and pointing to pipeline, the more it makes sense to the board.
Hey, Camela, quick question. I
Sure.
know a lot of folks are really struggling right now with
Yeah.
even coming close to hitting numbers.
Yep. Yep.
What do we do in that situation? I mean, do we try and sugarcoat it? Do we
No.
try and just say, here's where we're at, shit's
Yep.
hitting the fan? This
Yep.
is, and then do we want to do we want to present, here's how we're going to try and overcome this, mediate this? What does that conversation usually look like?
I love that question. And yes, a lot of people are facing that right now. So there's a few things I would do if it's possible. Well, one, I should know this at the beginning of the quarter that we're behind on pipeline, and I should be just adjusting throughout the quarter. So when I go talk to the board, I'm going to talk to them about what we adjusted, what worked, what didn't, and what we're going to do next time. So if you're waiting until the end of the quarter to see if we're hitting our bookings and pipeline goals, you're too late. Look at those numbers throughout the quarter. It is so important for marketers to look at pipeline and bookings, because if you do that early on, you have a chance to adjust. If you hear we missed it at the end of the quarter, you have no chance of making an impact in quarter and telling a better story. So that's number one. Number two is when we have a bad quarter, remember, if you're pointing fingers at other departments, every time you point your finger, there are three fingers pointing back at you. So we want to start our conversation with what we're doing in marketing to adjust to the economy. Are we targeting personas higher up in the organization? Are we forced to cut costs? So how are we adjusting to cutting those costs? And how are those cost cuts impacting our ability to generate leads and pipeline? It's going to be a different story, but we're still focused on what's the overall number. We're going to be honest about that number. We're not going to hide anything. And we're going to be practical about how we're fixing it. So it's interesting. I've been in down quarters. If you resist the temptation to blame your business partner in sales and focus on what you can do and change, the perception the board will have of you, and your CEO and your sales team will have of you, is going to be much more positive, and you're going to be able to have a more positive working environment. If we're throwing sales under the bus, even if they earned being thrown under the bus, it's just a bad look. So we need to do as much as we can to demonstrate that we are removing as much friction as possible for the sales team. Maybe we're looking at gating leads differently. Maybe we're looking at different personas. Maybe we've adjusted our messaging. All of these things should help conversion rates. So we're going to be more focused on conversion rates in a down quarter and where we can find efficiencies. And I actually have a guidebook on how to use the funnel to do that we can share. But yes, be honest. Don't hide anything. Don't sugarcoat it, because it's going to look like you're hiding stuff and they're not going to trust you. So it's just really important to be totally transparent.
Well, and as you're talking about partnering with sales and that true cross-functional alignment, are you getting with the sales teams and the ops teams and whoever else before the session? And
Absolutely.
so that way you're all kind of presenting more of a
Yep.
unified approach. Okay.
Yeah. So if I'm working with an operations team, I want them working with sales ops to make sure their numbers tie out. I want them talking to finance. I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. If early in the quarter I spot that we're behind on pipeline and we're going to have a problem, I set up weekly meetings with sales management, and we go through our pipeline numbers and we discuss strategy. So we're meeting on a weekly basis to figure out if there's a get well plan we can institute before the end of the quarter. So we are always talking. So
Yeah.
my saying is, no one should ever be surprised in the boardroom Nothing should come as a shock to the sales team. If I'm noticing conversion rates are bad and I'm doing everything I believe and we need help getting follow-up, this should not be a surprise to the salesperson when I bring this up in the board meeting, and I will. Okay, those are great questions. I love it. I love it. Just checking on time. Okay, so we're going to talk about the keys to negotiation because people are emotional decision makers as much as we think we're logical. Even board members, we're focusing on numbers. We're still emotional based humans, and a lot of it's based on our gut. So if you think about sales, this perception is sales is really good with numbers. They really are on top of math and all that good stuff. The only reason that perception exists is because everyone's familiar with the numbers they're presenting. They have a standard across every business. I see every sales leader report on the same numbers. And as marketers, if we can start doing something similar and focusing on the core metrics, we can start building credibility with our numbers and trust across the board as well. So, like I've been saying, and I'm just going to keep saying this because the more we hear it, the more it sinks in. Telling stories changes minds, data doesn't. So if we can tie this to hearts and minds, we can be more convincing. And the way to do that is every story has a beginning, middle, and an end. So a data story, and I'm not saying we're telling fiction stories. No. Nonfiction also has a story arc, and we're going to do nonfiction stories. So we're going to be honest, we're going to be grounded, and we're going to talk about the result, the reason for the result, and what you'll do to repeat or avoid it. That is your story. Here's how we did. Here's what I learned. Here's what we're going to do next. That's what they want to learn or hear from you. And that's going to help them understand you know what's going on, you know how to respond to it, and they're going to trust you as a leader because of it. Okay? So, data on its own doesn't change minds. We covered this. I have a bunch of research and articles to support it if you don't believe me. And we're moving on. So, negotiation. There are 4 elements to negotiation, and they're all really important, but one's more important than the others. So we're going to go through really quickly what each of these are and how we're going to use them in the boardroom. So pathos, that is paying attention to the values and beliefs of the people you're presenting to. So that means I have empathy, and I can understand what's motivating the people on the board and my cohorts in the boardroom. So I understand that my board has invested money and they want to get more out of their investment, and they want to be secure in that investment and understand that their leaders are doing what they can to do the best with the money they were given. And I understand that the people sitting around me that are my peers, they're worried about job security, and that's going to be motivating a lot of these conversations. Logos is logical appeal. So I mentioned humans are emotional decision makers. We just are. And then we like to point to numbers and rationalize that decision. So we're going to be providing the story, and we're going to be providing the numbers for them to buy into the story. Okay. Ethos is the most important element of this 4-spoke wheel. Okay. So ethos is a speaker's trustworthiness. And unfortunately, this is where business leaders lose their job. So if the board doesn't believe in the numbers you're reporting, they change, you're focusing on different things, you're not stating right away how the overall business objective was missed or hit, you appear tone deaf at best and sketchy at worst. So if we're changing what we're reporting on, the perception is that we're hiding something. We're just focusing on our best, we're putting our best foot forward, and we're not showing the full picture. That's why I say never report on initiatives, always focus on bookings, pipeline, leads, and engagement, because you're not hiding anything there in their eyes. And this is never intentional. I've seen a lot of marketers blow up their relationship unintentionally. Just keep in mind, be consistent, report on the things they care about the most, and be transparent. because the minute they start to sense something shifty, they're going to go with their gut because people are emotional. And then Kairos is really helpful for negotiating. So if you need more budget, if you need additional headcount, if you need to change tactics, tying it to what's happening in the market, what's happening right now, or a goal we have in the immediate future is going to create the urgency that will get buy-in from the rest of the team. So think of the most effective cons. So like, we've all heard about the email from the CEO asking for gift cards. And some people buy into it. You know, inevitably one or two people in the company will go buy the gift cards because there's an urgency and they think it's an emergency and somebody needs their help and they're going to do it. So if there's urgency, people are more likely to buy into it and not think as much because they feel like they have to act now. We're going to kind of use that same tactic in our board reporting, which is, we're not conning anyone, but we are leveraging a psychological thing to get additional buy-in into what we're saying. Okay, so we're going to give an example of how we use this. So, pathos. The economy has softened and sales hasn't been even near their original goal. The CEO and board are worried about their investment, market stability, their job security, and they have really averse feelings towards risk because of that instability. So we know, using empathy, this is where their heads are at right now. And this is what we're up against as marketers, because we know that in a downturn, we have to change what we're doing and there's risk associated with that, and we're going to hit some resistance. But we know why we're going to hit some resistance. So we're going to use logos. We have research that supports that investing more in advertising and focusing on customer marketing are two extremely smart moves during a downturn. So we have the research that backs us, but we're still running into that risk-averse behavior because we haven't tied into that emotional pull. So ethos, we've demonstrated consistently that our return on advertising spend is above industry average. Our prediction that this downturn was going to impact, so we saw the early signals in the market that this was coming. We warned them, and we've built credibility because of that. And then we're going to meet with the CEO ahead of the board meeting and talk to them about what kind of strategy we need to present that looks really smart and is based on research that the board can buy into, even though it's risky, because we need to make some changes. We can't stay the same. If we stay the same, we're going to continue to fail. So we're going to meet with the CEO ahead of time, and we're going to tie into pathos, logos, and ethos, and then tie that to our board meeting to incentivize them to buy into a new strategy. So I'm using those 4 key elements. I'm meeting ahead of time. I'm developing urgency. I'm tying it to what they're worried about. So if we're not hitting our number and our pipeline is behind, we need to change things. And based on research, these are the things we should change. And here's what I'm proposing. And remember, when I've done this in the past, boss, we've won. Like, we did the right thing. You can trust me. So all of those elements are tying into this argument. Now it's story time. I'm going to tell you why ethos matters most. And I was at a company, and we had a CMO decide to use some creative reporting. And they didn't want to tell a bad story. They knew that sales had missed their number, but they want to focus on what marketing is doing to make it better. But on our way to telling that story, they decided to change the dimensions on their charts to make it look even better. Everyone noticed. Like, this doesn't go under the radar. The person lost credibility and their entire team was fired. Like, not just the one person, the entire team. And that team also had trouble finding their next job. So ethos, if If we're cagey, if we're creative, if we're not just totally transparent, that's going to blow things up, and that's going to be the thing that gets us pushed out of our job. And that's the only reason I tell this story. And I'm not going to say who it was or anything like that, but the moment that happened, the CFO and the CEO, who had a finance background, they both spotted it immediately, that chart change and the dimensions, and they thought it was weird that they were focusing on different things. That person was out of there in less than a month, which is hard to do with an executive.
I'm really curious. So I have heard from a few members of similar-ish situations of they've now come into a new org and they're going through the white papers and
Yep.
it says customers who were surveyed, and they say, where's the survey? And that marketing leader says, well, this just felt right after some of the conversations I had. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's a really big problem. Like someone at some point is going to ask for that survey, and if it's not there, that's a really big problem. What do? What would you say, especially having been in a situation where it went so nuclear?
Yeah.
What do you do in something like that?
Um, you make your boss mad. So I've been in that position. I've had people say, other companies are making it up. Why don't we? And I'm like, because brand matters, especially right now. And so many people want to buy online, and that experience they have on Amazon is what they expect everywhere else. So they want to see the peer reviews, they want to see real data. And if they don't trust your organization, they're not sticking around, even if you win them initially. They're going to be like, wow, those surveys were really wrong because of what I'm experiencing. Why don't we focus on fixing the problem that we're trying to hide instead of lying about it? So I am not a fan of fudging the numbers, making up surveys, any of that. I am all about building an authentic brand and being honest. So, like, we're an attribution company, and I'm going to be the first person to tell you you cannot track everything in attribution, and it is an estimate. It should never be used as the definitive measure of marketing. And the reason why I do that is so many people have been burned before, and I want our brand to be authentic, like that authenticity needs to come through. So tell them no. And if you find that somebody's doing that, you're going to lose a lot of respect for that leader. You might learn a lot of other things that are positive from them. So, but be careful who you tie your personal brand to, because if this person eventually, and they will eventually, gets caught and it blows up and you're tied in with it, you're guilty by association. So just be really careful who you tie your brand to. And that's one of the things I ask early on in interviews is like, what's your approach to this? How are your feelings about brand? And, like, I saw a bunch of stats on your website. Where did those come from? Like, incorporate that into your interview. Like, you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you run into that, use that as an opportunity to learn what to avoid in the future.
I love that. I think I so appreciate that. I was like, Camela's gonna be the perfect person because she'll know exactly what to say. Because I know you've been through so much, and I love, especially now with everyone going through job interviews. I think you bring up some really great points of just making sure, and it kind of goes to the ethos of point that you're saying too. You want to make sure that you're joining a company that you really can believe in and you can trust. And if they're, my mom used to always say, like, if you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the big things. And so you look at those little things of data points that, you just never know. So
Yeah.
I'll let you
Well,
get back to it, but
no, I mean, it's one of my core values, right? And I had to do a lot of soul searching and figure out what my core values were and why certain company environments weren't working for me. And once I discovered that was one of them, I learned to incorporate that into my interviews. So I really recommend people read books like Nonviolent Communication, because there are so many applications in the business world. There's always going to be friction with sales, but I'm really proud of the synergy I built between
yeah.
sales and marketing. And that wasn't possible without nonviolent communication, knowing my values, and being
Yep.
able to communicate from a really authentic point of view. Cool. Okay, so yeah, we're just reinforcing what we've been talking about throughout. Never avoid delivering bad news. Consistently report on the same metrics. Don't change results or dimensions. I just told the story why that doesn't work. And report back on what happened to the deliverables you promised in the last meeting. So if we committed to something, it's okay if we had to pivot away from it, if that wasn't our focus because something big happened in the market, like SVB blew up and then our resources were tied up, so we couldn't do the paid advertising we wanted to for a few days, and that impacted it. Just have an explanation. Like, everybody's going to understand. People have been extremely empathetic about the whole SVB situation. They'll
Yeah.
understand. Just let them know, hey, that happened. This is why I missed it. We'll do better next time, provided another bank, heaven forbid.
And by next time, we mean hopefully never.
Yes, exactly. So, finally, if you're going to point out a problem with another business unit, remember, one finger pointing at people, three fingers pointing back. So if you're going to point out a problem with somebody else, you better be able to speak to everything you've done on your side to prevent the issue on your side. So, for example, if I notice my conversion rate from lead to opportunity is going down, the first place I'm going to look is, am I targeting the right people? Has our persona changed because the market has changed? Do we need to fine tune our ideal customer profile and change how we gate things? And then I'm going to look at the systems, and I'm going to see, is the way we set up things wrong? Is the sales team able to see the leads and act on them? And then I'm going to look at the manager and be like, are you managing to certain expectations? Do we have an SLA? Are we doing this? But that's going to be last. The first thing I need to do is make sure I've removed every piece of friction available. I understand the most easily converted sources, and I'm focusing there to solve our pipeline problem. Like, all of those things I need to demonstrate that I'm doing and communicate and show that I'm doing before I start hammering other people over the head, which I do, but I make sure all my ducks are in a row first. And then check your numbers with other departments. The worst thing that can happen is that you come with a new business pipeline and bookings number, and it's different than what sales and finance are reporting. Never do that. It ruins your ethos. And then make an effort to understand the shortcomings of your data. Reporting on marketing data is hard. Using attribution is hard. Explaining attribution, oh, that is so hard. So you need to understand the shortcomings and that things are an estimate and how to speak to what you can and can't track. The dark funnel's a thing. Let's make sure we're literate and able to explain really succinctly, I hear you. I would love to report on that too, but here's what's in the way. And sometimes it's resources, like money. I don't have the budget to bring in a tool. Would love to report on that. All right. So bringing it all together. Finally, we're going to determine what your audience cares about most. We're only going to present what they care about. We're going to build an appendix for supporting material, and we're going to put our initiatives in the appendix, and we're going to speak to how those initiatives drove the top line numbers as we're presenting the top line numbers. So we need to have in our heads, we did this, this, and this. Here's what they produced, and that's why we had a pipeline spike in December and why Q4 looks so great. So that's going to be the story that we need to tell. So there's this concept in marketing called they ask, you answer. And that's exactly how we're going to think about presenting. So keep in mind, and we're going to be super transparent. They ask, you answer. How did your team perform? How has that changed over time? Why did it change over time? And what is your plan going forward? That's all your deck should really be. So the one thing I want to get across to people is you don't have to be good at math to be really great at presenting to the executive team. We need to be able to read charts, and that's pattern matching, and that's a human thing we develop at a really young age. It's how we recognize our parents. It's how we know what kind of peanut butter we like. it's something we can all do. So come prepared, know what they care about, know how to tell your story, and be honest, and you're going to be fine. So that's my presentation in a nutshell.
One of the questions we got was, how do you best know what they want to talk about? Like, how do you get time with board members? Do you kind of take it from the CEO? What's the best process for that?
Great question. So it's going to depend on what kind of organization it is. And I could talk about it really quickly at a high level, but most private equity firms are focused on making the company as profitable as possible because they're taking a major stake in the company. So it's in their best interest to figure out how to make it scale and sell it off as quickly as possible. You're going to have a laundry list of metrics. You still need to know, though, that your focus is demonstrating how did I help the company perform against goal? How am I helping the company perform against future goals? And how am I managing my expenses? Because in private equity firms, we really care about maximizing our profit margin. So if we can talk about the ways that we've found that are to leverage low cost channels and really get more leverage out of that and how it positively impacts pipeline, you're going to have fans on the board. Venture backed, they take a much more minor stake in the company, and their interest is getting you ultimately, hopefully, to IPO. So they want you to demonstrate that you understand what it takes to scale a business. And we're coming back to the core tenets again. You're going to show them how you help the business hit plans, bookings, how you're going to help the business hit plan in the future, pipeline, and then you're going to talk about other things you're doing in the market to maximize efficiency. And that's where your leads and overall engagement are going to come in, and you're going to speak to which channels you're focusing on and how you're maximizing efficiency to scale faster. So the story you tell, even if your IPO, is going to be really similar. You're always going to be focusing on what result you had, so bookings, what result you're going to have, pipeline, and then you're going to tell the story with the leading indicators like leads and engagement. So it's kind of the same story. That's what they care about the most. Now, what your slides look like, you're going to take direction from your CEO. So the first things I ask, so I've reported to some boards, they wanted nothing other than the chart, and then they wanted dead silence while the chart was up there so they had time to read it. And I was like, this, okay. And then you were supposed to speak to how all of that happened, which is fine. I prefer to have a few bullet points, like here are my observations, here's what we're doing to change things, and the chart. And that's all I have. And that works for most businesses, but talking to the CEO and asking, hey, how do people normally structure their slides? Like, I want to see what the sales team has done in the past, or the CEO has done in the past. In like the public sections, there's private sections where you won't be able to see what's in the deck, even in the C-suite. But if you can see what other departments have done in the past, that'll really help guide you. That's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you. Wow. I took so many notes. I'm very excited.
Wonderful. So Treveni was awesome, and she put in the comments the link to our certification. You can be LinkedIn certified for B2B marketing board reporting. And the link is in the notes.
I need to take this. This looks amazing. This is awesome. Well, I am so incredibly thankful again for your time, Camela. This is outstanding as always. I love how tactical everything is, and like just how easy you break it down. And I liked how deep you got into the ethos and every aspect of that, and really how you can leverage every step of that. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. I'm excited. Everyone, this is all going to be on YouTube this afternoon. I'll drop that link in the events channel. And if there's any other questions, you can find Miss Thompson in the community. So
see you there.
thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.